right, and now it's time for this month's presentation. So tonight we'll be learning about how we can help New York's breeding birds by contributing to the largest community science project in the state. New York State Breeding Bird Atlas Project Coordinator Julie Hart will be updating us on how we can participate in the statewide birding survey at any time during this 5th and final year of the New York Breeding Bird Atlas Project using just our free eBird app. There won't be another atlas until 2040, so join me in welcoming Julie as she tells us how we can explore new areas, search for clues into the secret lives of birds, and expand our understanding and appreciation of birds while supporting this important conservation effort. Julie?
How's that lighting? Is that good?
Yeah.
Is everyone going to fall asleep? Or?
Could be darker.
Could be darker? Alright. So first quiz of the night. Anyone know what bird this is?
Juvenile Canada Jay.
Read in the front. Oh. Yeah, you're good. I really need to remove that. I gave a talk recently in Albany, and a woman who does a lot of banding, and I thought really knew her birds. She was like, I have no idea what that thing is. And I was like, oh, well, apparently you don't go to the Adirondacks very much, because, yeah, this is, great, well, it's really nice to be here. I think I haven't talked to you guys since like 2019, before the Atlas actually got started. So it's good to be back. And hopefully I can answer a lot of questions and get you all excited about this project. And I do have, don't let me forget that I do have stuff on the back table. I have stickers and some handouts and books and stuff like that on the back. So before you go, please take a look. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of background around the project and what atlasing is. How I know Swan is super atlaser. All right, he's addicted. Anybody else been out? Bob, you're super atlaser, right? All right, there's a few of you. Jerry, right? Jerry, yes. All right, so what is atlasing? So I like to say that it's very similar to normal birding, except there's a few crucial differences. One is that you tend to go to places that you may not normally go to, because we want to cover the entire state, right? So we don't want people just going all to the same hotspots. We want people to spread out. And so it's a really fun way to explore new areas. Crucial thing is that it's a form of slow birding. So when I'm out atlasing, I literally walk like a mile an hour. It's not for exercise, right? It's in order to observe what each of the birds are actually doing. So I'm not just walking a trail and writing down everything that I'm hearing and counting the individual birds, but I'm actually looking at every single one of them with my binoculars and seeing, do they have anything in their mouth? Are they making funny noises that I'm not used to hearing? Are they going into some little shrub somewhere out of sight and then coming back out? So it's kind of the original slow birding is what I like to call it. And then obviously the other thing I just mentioned is that you're watching for breeding behaviors, which a lot of us tend not to do. So you're actually asking you to go out in the middle of the summer when a lot of people kind of take a break from birding because it's hot and you're not as likely to find rare things. But that's when our birds are doing these really cool things, which I find really rewarding to go out and actually be in touch with what's happening right now. And then the other thing that we're doing this time around, some of you have been around for prior atlases as well. This time around, instead of using paper, we are using the eBird app. So it's free, right? Most people probably already are using eBird. And we'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but there's a particular, what eBird calls portals, and that just basically means we have like a little sub-project on eBird that's just for the atlas. And so if you're using the mobile app, we do need to change the settings so that it goes, your data comes to the atlas. And if you're entering data online, there's a particular website that we ask you to go to. So we have, I think this time around, this atlas, one of our goals is to engage birders at all levels. And we've tried to make this atlas really accessible to people of all backgrounds. So we have younger birders, we have older birders, we have people birding in the city, people birding out in the wilderness, we have beginner birders, advanced birders, everyone in between is able to participate because we're using eBird, which is free and accessible to everyone, and two, we're really asking you to just report what the behavior is that you see, and you don't have to actually do too much interpretation of like, was that actually like a territorial dispute or not? I'm not sure. So if you see two birds fighting and being aggressive, you just write it as territorial. And then we will do the job later on to say, was that actually a sign that they're breeding locally? So that's one of the things we do differently this time. We have been involved, actually didn't know that you guys had a youth group, but we have been doing summer trips the last few summers with the New York State Young Birders Club. And this year we'll be doing a trip down just on the south end of the Catskills, and then hopefully we'll be able to do another trip up in the Adirondacks as well. So for anyone who knows young birds around here, you're more than welcome to join those trips as well. All right, so these are some of the behaviors that you would be observing. So you have individuals feeding each other. That could be either a form of courtship, if it's two adults feeding each other, or it could be a parent feeding a young. If you see fledglings, if you see a bird carrying food, this grackle photo in the bottom right is a juvenile that's doing that typical begging. So if you're not familiar with watching young birds, that's what they do. They spread their wings out and flutter them while they're calling and have their bill wide open trying to like get food from the parents. What else? You've got a nest. You can find birds in a nest. Maybe you have some nest boxes in your yard. We want that information as well. All right, so why are we doing this? This is a huge effort. We only do it every 20 years, but it still is a monumental effort every time we do it. We spent 5 years. We're trying to cover the entire state. We're trying to get a snapshot of where everything is breeding and when they're breeding. And so that's part of the reason why it's a community science project, because we can't do it ourselves. It needs thousands of people to participate in order to make this work. And the big thing for us, one of the core products of this project is to get distribution information. So to figure out exactly where things are breeding and getting a really fine, detailed map of where everything is distributed within New York State. And then in this atlas, we are also collecting abundance information. So we do have a separate team of people that are doing these standardized point counts, doing those all across state and helping us get at abundance as well. So we'll be able to see not just where everything is breeding, but how many birds are breeding in the different parts of the state. And then we're also looking at phenology, so that's one of the other things that we've looked at a little bit with some of the past atlas data, is looking at how the timing of breeding has changed, how ranges have changed over time with climate change, right? And so this time around, we have very precise information because we're using eBird, and every time you go out and submit a checklist, we've got the date and the time, we've got the species, and we have all the behaviors that you're submitting. So we get these really finely detailed information on phenology when they're breeding. And this is the third time we're doing this in New York. So New York is among the first states to do a third breeding bird atlas. And that means we're going to have a 40-year time period that we're going to be able to look at changes. And so we already, after the second atlas, were able to see some real changes, some shifts in the range distribution for some species because of climate change. A lot of species were already moving northward even after the second atlas. So I'm presuming that with this third atlas, we'll be able to see even stronger changes. And then the most important thing for me is that it really informs conservation. So we're getting all this detailed information. It's useful for science and research, but it also goes back into our planning and how we're using the landscape. So I have just a couple examples. Funnily enough, I do have the peregrine falcons from Titanic. This one's from Sandy Panoka. So one of the ways that we use the information is to update status assessments. So the state will look at, they're actually planning to revise the state threatened and endangered species list in the next couple of years. And so the atlas information will be used to reassess all of the species and determine whether or not different species need to be added to the list. So that's one way it's used. It's also used for protecting different areas of the state that are really important for birds, right? So we have the important bird area program, and then New York State took that one step further and said any important bird areas that fall on state lands, we're going to call a bird conservation area, and then it comes with extra protections, right? So we're actually able to see some regulations that protect the diversity at those areas. Grassland birds, that's a really big topic right now with all of the solar and wind development that's occurring across the state. And the, let's see, so Ottawa, New York, and DC, and a couple of other organizations looked at that information that was collected from the previous atlases, and they were able to say, these are the really important areas across the state for grassland birds. And then they had the landowner incentive program for several years, and they were able to pay farmers to prevent them from mowing. And so there was actually some feedback there from the atlas information to protect those grassland birds. Nowadays, one of the things that we've been really pushing with the atlas, because DC has been asking us to, is trying to encourage people to get out and document as many grassland birds as possible, because there are so many solar and wind projects being proposed right now, and we want to make sure that we cite those in the appropriate areas where they're not going to do less damage and destroy less grassland habitat, right? And so any place where we can go out and we can document breeding northern harriers or sandpipers or sedge wrens, things like that, then we can say, go back to the government and say, hey, you shouldn't be putting ways that the atlas data are used. The DEC staff that I work very closely with have told me that the breeding bird atlas data is the best data set that they have available in the state, and it is used for conservation, not just for birds, but for all of the other taxonomic groups in the state as well, because it's the best data we have. And so if we can protect some of the areas that are really important for the birds, then hopefully that will trickle down to the mammals and the herbs and the insects and all of that as well. So it's one of the best, most complete data sets that we have in New York State. All right, so what are we finding? So I mentioned that we have thousands of atlasers. Right now, it's a little over 3,800. I'm still really hoping that we're going to get 4,000. I don't know why, but from the beginning of the project, I was like, I really want 4,000 atlasers. I don't know, just random, but it looks like we're going to hit that. So we're very close. We have over 500,000 checklists in eBird in the Atlas projects already. And so far we have 955 of our prairie blocks are complete, and we've confirmed breeding for 229 species, and then there's a handful of other species as well for which we have probably breeding. So on this map, what you're seeing is one of the ways that eBird presents the Atlas data. And this is the number of species that have been detected in each of the Atlas blocks all across the state. Right? So it's a huge state, so we break it up into these smaller blocks called Atlas blocks. We have selected priority blocks because we know that it's just not possible to cover every single block with an equal amount of effort. So we want to make sure we get at least a minimum amount of effort in a baseline set of blocks. So what you see here in the black are the blocks that we've called complete, that we've said that they've been covered adequately. So don't go here, please go to another place. So one of the things that you may see here is that we still do have some big gaps, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, how we're addressing that this final year. But you can also see, so Tompkins County has the most effort of anywhere in the state. Right? You see how dark red that is? It has like, I don't know, something like 11,000 hours or something of effort. I mean, it's like unreal amount of effort compared to anywhere else in the state. So really what my message will boil down to later tonight is we really need people to spread out, to go in either direction, away from Ithaca, particularly west, actually. There's a lot of gaps, particularly in Steuben County. So, all right, what else are we finding? So there's a few species that I like to highlight. There's been some major changes since we did the first atlas. So this is for red-bellied woodpecker. The leftmost map is from that first atlas we did in the 1980s. Then the middle map is from the 2000 atlas, and then you have the current atlas on the right. And so, red-bellied woodpeckers are one of those species that has been gradually moving northward. We have warmer winters, we have a lot more people feeding birds. They're able to spend the year here, year-round, right? And so their populations have really spread throughout the lower and warmer, the lower elevation and the warmer parts of the state. Black vulture is another one. So they weren't even here in the state in the 1980s at all. And then in the second atlas, they started to move up into the lower Hudson Valley. And now we can start to see there's a couple of blocks way up around Fort Ticonderoga. And then there's a few like Syracuse and around Ithaca, and there's even a few observations out by Rochester. So that's one that's really expanding. That one's expanding from south to north. Merlin is another one that I like to use, and that one's actually expanding from north to south. So that one was also Merlin. We're not in New York State breeding at all in the 1980s. And then they came down into the Adirondacks in the second atlas, and now they're breeding all the way down in Pennsylvania. So that's another one that's pretty cool to look at. Osprey, very similar to bald eagles. They have completely taken over the entire state, anywhere that has water. So you can see in the first atlas they were pretty restricted to Long Island and the Adirondacks. And now it's like anywhere that there's water, they're there, they're breeding. And eagles aren't quite as tightly associated with water, but they've also just completely expanded all across the state. And both of those, I think, we've seen that same population trend nationwide for those species because of the banning of DDT. So I think that's what you're seeing there. We also do have some species where we're seeing some declines, right? So we know that a lot of the grassland birds are having trouble. Even something as common as a meadowlark, meadowlarks and bobolinks are also experiencing declines, even though they are more common grassland birds. So that one is not unexpected. This one maybe is a little bit more unexpected. So we're also seeing a decline in aerial insectivores, so anything that's flying around and eating insects, so flycatchers and swallows and swifts and things like that. And so you can see here, it started to thin out a little bit. They were still pretty much statewide in the second atlas, but it's a little bit thinner, right? You can see some holes in there. And then now with this atlas, there's quite a few more holes. Hopefully we'll fill in some of that this year, but most likely what we're starting to see is a little bit of decline because of the decline in insects. All right, how many people have heard about Mississippi Hike? A few of you, yeah. Yeah, so this one, there's only one here, but this pair did set up just a little bit north of Albany a couple years ago, and it was pretty exciting while it happened. It's really far north for them, so this is a range map for them. So you can see they're really restricted to the southeast. They are slowly moving up the east coast. The other northernmost area where they breed regularly, there is one place in New Hampshire where they've been breeding the last few, maybe 10 years actually now. But this is pretty far north for them. So that was pretty exciting. That was really only like half an hour from where I live, so that was really nice to see. All right, so yes, hummingbird nests. How many people have found a hummingbird nest? Oh my God, wow. That's one of the questions I get the most. How do you find a hummingbird nest? And I don't have a good answer other than it's just like luck. Like, because I've tried, I don't know how many of you have tried this, but like you see a hummingbird and you're like, I know it's breeding somewhere, you find a female, right? And you follow her, and you see, okay, she's going that way. And then you try to run after her. and then she's outside, right? And you're like, okay, I'm just gonna wait here until she does her rounds and she comes back, and then I'm gonna follow her to the next step. And I tried to do this. And it's been like 20, 30 minutes trying to chase them down, and it doesn't work. I don't have a good clue for any tips for how to find a hummingbird nest. I feel like it's just one of those things that you just kind of accidentally happen wrong. But so if anyone has any tips, please let me know. All right. All right, so the final year, this is the last year of this atlas. We still have a lot of work to do. You can see all of these gaps on this map, right? So anywhere that is white or yellow, It doesn't look very white up there. The palest patch is there. So most of the North Country, let's see, the Catskills and Sullivan County, and then out by Steuben, and a little bit up like Seneca and Maine counties there. Those are kind of the places where we really want to get effort this year. I think with all of that's left, we, the steering committee met and decided, okay, probably we're not going to be able to cover all of those remaining blocks this year. Okay, so how do we prioritize? So here's what we did. And this is what we're asking people to do for this final year. So originally we had set out 2 blocks for every, so those blocks that the state is broken up by is according to those old USGS topo maps, which aren't even updated anymore, but that's what we still use. Okay, so you have these old topo plot maps, and you break it up into 6 equal blocks, and then we chose the northwest and the center east blocks. It's just randomly, that's how it happened. And so those were our priority blocks, but we're deciding, okay, we probably can't do that. Let's at least try to get 1 block complete in every topo plot, okay? Because then we'll have a nice representative sample of all the different habitats and regions across the state, right? So what we've done is we've said, okay, focus on the center east blocks in every plot, okay? And then on top of that, we also want people to really focus in on the core, like the peak breeding season, which is really like maybe like the last week of May until the beginning of August, which is when a lot of people stop birding, right? And it's really hot, and it's buggy, and it's kind of miserable. But that's when the birds are out there doing their thing. That's what they came all this way to do, is to breed and to raise their young. So we really want people to get out there at that time of year, because, so honestly, I would say the last week of June and the first 2 weeks of July is when we're most likely to see lots of babies, really funny looking, scrubby babies with tufts of hair or tufts of feathers everywhere, and the parents busy feeding young everywhere. So that's like the peak time to go out and find all of these breeding birds. So that's what we're asking this final year, is to focus on the center east blocks and really focusing on that peak breeding season. I think I'll skip this for now, actually. All right, so where are we at in Ithaca, in this surrounding area? So these are some of the counties in this area. And then I've sorted it by the number of the center east blocks that are remaining to be completed in each county, okay? So you can see, so Tompkins is on the bottom because Tompkins County is totally done. We've got way more than enough effort in Tompkins County. Okay. Steuben County, as you can imagine, has the fewest, like the least, lowest population of birders in the state. So we need tons of help in Steuben County. Surprisingly, Broome County comes next. I don't know why, but nobody's birding in Binghamton. I don't know. Anyways, so you can see here the number of blocks that are remaining in each of the counties and roughly how many hours we want to put into all of those blocks. So if you live in one of these areas or vacation in one of these areas or know somebody who does, who may be interested in watching bird behaviors, then please have them get in touch with us. So actually just on Friday, we launched a new block tool that allows you to search and visualize the block effort a little bit better than what you can see from eBird. So you can get to this from our website, or I put the URL up in the top corner there as well. So what you're looking at here is I put the major cities there. The purpley blocks are the ones that are complete, that are done. You can see like Ithaca is a sea of purple. And then for the center-east blocks, where we really want you to go, those are the red ones. And then the northwest blocks, which are our other priority blocks, are the yellow ones. So this is kind of where they all are located around this area. And this is all, it's interactive. You can zoom in and out. This is where you can go and download maps for each block. You can visualize it in different ways. So this is another, this is the same spatial area, right? But you can look at it in terms of the number of hours that we want to put into all of the blocks. So we're trying to hit 15 hours in every block. And so all of the ones that are really bright yellow have next to 0 effort. The ones that are the darker blue, purple, those are close to being done. So if you had a choice of where to go, I would say go with the yellow ones. Those are the ones that we would at least like to get a list of species that are present in those blocks. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so the key things for getting involved are 1, to watch for the breeding behaviors, 2, to submit your observations in our Atlas portal in eBird, and to go out. What I mean by Atlas strategically here is basically going to those center-east blocks and timing it right to fill in gaps, so that we get a lot of those breeding behaviors observed. And if you're able to commit to a block, so if you can tell us and say, hey, yeah, I can do this particular block, that means we can divert our efforts and focus somewhere else, right? So that does help us if you say that you can do that. All right, just a couple more slides. This here, if you're not already using the mobile app on eBird, I do highly recommend it if you have a smartphone. It'll save you a lot of time and headache, because once you switch the settings over into the Atlas portal, the app will actually show you where you are in the block. It'll give you even an alert. It'll show up. It'll like buzz in your pocket, and it'll be like, hey, you're about to cross out of that block. You better turn around or start a new checklist or something, right? So it gives you the warnings and allows you to see where you are. So if anybody has questions about how to do that, to change the settings and get into the Atlas portal, please come up to me afterwards and I can show you how to do it really easily. It's pretty quick. All right. What can you do right now? Because we're not quite in peak breeding season, but there are a lot of things that are starting to breed already or have already started. So, all of those owls, they're all really busy. A lot of the hawks, the ones that are the resident hawks, and the eagles, they're already on nests. Woodcock, snipe, turkeys, they're already all doing their courtship displays everywhere. Ravens are already on nest. Crows and jays are getting really busy. All of our resident cavity nesters, so nuthatches and chickadees and woodpeckers and things like that, they've already been courting and doing courtship feeding and getting their nests ready and having all kinds of territorial disputes in my backyard. They've been really noisy. Anyways, they're all really busy. We've got all of the city birds, they're already nesting. as well. And then things like horned larks, they breed really early. They're probably already on nest. They start, if you don't know this, I think it's pretty cool. Horned larks will actually make their nest and lay their eggs while there's still snow on the ground. It's pretty crazy. And they're ground nesters, right? So it's like crazy. Crossbills and cardinals as well are busy. So there's a lot of things that are actually happening right now. And we're just getting all these migrants back, and it's like as soon as they get back, they start getting busy. They'll start getting on their territories, they'll be checking out nest sites, all that kind of thing. All right, and I like to show a couple of maps like this just to show you, even if you're a beginner birder, and maybe you don't feel as confident as going out and saying, oh, I heard 70 different species in the block. Even if you know a few key species, you can still fill in and provide some really useful information for us. So here's a map. This is what we currently have for great horned owl observations around Ithaca. And so all of the priority blocks are the ones that you see, the squares there, and then I filled in red, I filled in all of the blocks where there's absolutely no observation of great horned owls. Some of those blocks, maybe they don't have great horned owls, but I bet you most of them do. So a lot of people can identify, a barred owl or great horned owl call. And if you can, then you can probably provide some really valuable information that nobody else has submitted yet. There's a big spider. Woodcock as well, they're displaying right now, right? Everyone loves to go out and hear woodcocks displaying. This is the same type of deal where all the red squares are places where there have not been any breeding observations of woodcock. And we're running out of time because they're slowing down, starting to slow down. All right, rock pigeon. So I always like to make sure that people know that we really do want observations of rock pigeons and starlings and house sparrows, right? Because they're also living here and they have an impact on our native birds. So just because we don't necessarily appreciate them fully doesn't mean that we don't want data on them, right? So, so what I did, this one is slightly different. So all the red squares again are places where there have been no rock pigeon observations, breeding observations. And then I added in yellow every place where there was no probable or confirmed observations of rock pigeons. Because as you're driving around, if you see a rock pigeon going up under a bridge, that's a probable nest site, right? They're probably breeding up under there. And so anytime you see that, you can submit that and help us fill in the source.
We are currently in that red block right now.
We are.
Yeah.
There's pigeons around here. Yeah. Yeah, so that's, I just have to show a couple of maps like that just so people can say, you can still participate even if you're not, going out and finding Louisiana water thrushes or something that's a little more difficult, right? So a couple more things. We have a ton of different resources on the Atlas website that will help you figure out what you're receiving, how to do this, how to do that. Lots of frequently asked questions, recommendations, all that kind of stuff, all on the website. So I highly recommend checking that out if you are interested in learning more. And then we, the last few years, we've started doing this long weekend competition. We do it the last weekend in June. That's peak time to see breeding behaviors and confirm breeding for a lot of species. And so we have like a kickoff event where we'll have like either a speaker. Last year we did a trivia night, which was pretty fun. And then we have a weekend of competitions where just basically you go out atlasing and then we award prizes at an award ceremony the following week. And we have breakout rooms too so that you can meet other people from other atlas projects and hear like what kind of species they have or how they're using different habitats than what we see here, things like that. So we have projects right now going on all the way from Newfoundland to Puerto Rico. So it's pretty fun, actually, I think, to learn about what everyone else is seeing as well. All right, so hopefully I've convinced you a little bit that atlasing is really fun, and it's, for me, it's a very rewarding way to be outside and observing the birds. I feel like you're getting this really intimate look into their lives and really appreciating what it is that they're doing and struggling with every day. It also allows you to discover new places to go birding. And you, at the same time, you're contributing to science and conservation. You're learning a ton of information. Actually, one of the things that a lot of people tell me is, I didn't realize I would learn so many sounds, because you think of atlasing as watching birds, but what you're doing in order to find those birds is you're listening for call notes and little chip notes here and there. And so you're not actually listening to the songs as much, you're really paying attention to all those little other cues. So I think I'm just about done. I want to just remind people that I do have some information in the back. So I have examples of the second Green Atlas book. I have some books that I use as a reference for when I have questions, because I don't know everything, I don't understand everything that I'm seeing, and I have to look it up as well when people ask me questions. I have a bunch of stickers back there as well, which are free to take. And then I do have some maps, so like some of those maps I was showing you with the priority blocks in different areas, and a sign-up sheet in case anyone was feeling really motivated and wants to sign up for some blocks. I'm looking at you. All right, and then, I guess lastly I'll say, if you have any questions, you can reach anyone through this email address, mybb3@gmail.com. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X. Sounds funny. On Facebook, we have also a very active discussion group, so that's a really great place if you have questions to go and ask other atlasers what it is that you're seeing. So, all right. Question about?
Julie, I have a question or have a comment.
Yes.
I've done a fair amount of atlasing in the last couple of years, and I think the biggest thrill and benefit for me has been being forced to go to places that I would not belong, and discovering some incredible habitat.
Yeah.
Trails, rainforest reserves, and of course birds and bird habitat.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what I mean by getting you out to different places and learning. You find new places that you had no idea existed, and they're just, yeah. I find that to be one of the best things for me as well. It's great.
So if I'm out there birding and I'm logging into eBird, but I did go through the portal,
Yeah.
but I'm still filling out the behavior little things,
Mm-hmm.
that's not helping the atlas at all.
Unless if it's a point location, then yes, I could use that. But if it's a traveling checklist, I would have no way to know for sure that it stayed within an Atlas block. So when people are using the portal, it gives you those reminders and shows you where you're located. And so you're much less likely to, you've made a conscious effort as well to like switch over to the portal. And so I have a higher confidence that those checklists are within an Atlas block, contained within an Atlas block. So I can actually locate it, assign it to a block. But if it's outside the portal, I can't really do that because we don't get access, like eBird doesn't give us your track. So I have no way to know whether it's,
Actually, 4 years ago, when we started, the highest priority was given to confirmed behavior.
Yes.
Those are the list of behaviors that we were looking for. And
Yes.
then, a couple of years in, they added probable to confirmed as priorities. Have those priorities changed any now that you're getting into this pretty close to the end?
That's the slide I skipped over. So I didn't know how deep to go for people that haven't been actually like atlasing right along. So yes, so originally we said we wanted half of the species that you observe in the block, we wanted half of them to be confirmed, which is pretty hard to get to. It takes a lot of effort. We had a lot of people that were saying that, so historically that is what was asked in the previous atlases, so that's where that comes from. But this time around, it just seemed like people were really struggling to get to that level. I was struggling as well. And so, yeah, so then that's when we changed it to include those probable codes as well. So that would be option 1 up here. So what we did, when did we do that? 2023. So yeah, a year ago, we added in those probable codes, which made it quite a bit easier to complete a block. So now, for this final year, we're still using that same suite of guidelines that you see under number 1 to mark blocks complete. Excuse me. Or if they have a certain number of hours in the peak breeding season, that's another way that we can mark a block complete. So now we have those 2 ways. So that was the one way that the steering committee said, okay, we can make it even simpler for atlasers. Like and for me too, in like reviewing a block, if it hits that 15-hour mark, done. So that's what we've got now. Anything? Is that good, or do you have more follow-up questions? Good.
It's just good information. I mean,
Yeah.
It is what you need.
Yes.
Or what you can accept, so. that's
Yep.
good.
Yes.
I would point out that last year when we added probable breed behavior to confirm to work towards getting the block completed.
Mm-hmm.
One of the codes in probable breeding is the S7 code, which is a bird singing in the same location 7 days apart.
Yes.
Which meant if you went somewhere one weekend, you got bird singing, came back the next weekend,
Yes.
and there was a bird singing in that same spot. Didn't have to be the same bird,
Yes.
but the assumption is, anyway, that would count. So that
Yes.
encouraged a second trip, and it made getting confirmation much easier.
Yes.
It took some of the pressure off.
I will say that, if it was like a ruby-crowned piglet singing in this one bush 1 week in the beginning of May, and then it was there again the next week, I do look at, when I go, before I mark a block complete, I make sure that all of the codes are valid for that location. So, even though there are probably some blocks that have a lot of those S7 codes, not all of them actually count, right? Because it has to be a local breeding bird. So that is taken into consideration, just
Going with the S7, is it fair to say that if it's S7 within like end of May as opposed to April, it's more like questionable, right?
Yes.
So it's during the heart of the season.
Exactly, yeah, if it's in June, July, then I don't even take a second look. But if it's in May or April, then I'm like, okay, now I have to base, does that actually breathe in that location or not? So, yeah. Yeah, John?
I've done some analyses of eBird data, and it's so incredibly valuable because it's digitally available online. And you can look at change in location over time, you can count how many are there, time span. Looking ahead and looking backwards, past atlases, to my knowledge, aren't available anywhere near other eBird data. Looking ahead, are you thinking of trying to make the current atlas data available to the degree online that other eBird data is?
Yes, of course. Yeah, so we spent quite a bit of time trying to think about how to basically update the Atlas methodology and also the data storage and management and archiving, so that 20 years from now, we'll be able to get the most out of these data. One of the things that we were really concerned about was also trying to think about population trend information, which you can't get from the past atlas information. So that's why we incorporated the point counts this time around, so we can get abundance estimates, so we can actually get population estimates, so that then 20 years from now we'll be able to see if there's been a population decline. So right now what we can say is that the range has shrunk or expanded or whatever, but we can't say how many birds we've lost from our current atlas data because we don't have that information for the past atlases. So going forward, we're really trying to think about how to make sure that it's as compatible as possible, because there's also going to be so many more advances in statistics that we can't foresee. So we're trying to, keep as much detailed as we can in the data. One of the problems we had with the past atlases is that all of the data are we have a block. We know that somewhere in that block there was this bird, but we don't know where. We don't know on what dates. We don't know anything other than we have this bird doing this behavior somewhere in the block. So this time we'll have the precise locations for everything. We'll have the dates. We'll have the different breeding behaviors throughout the season, right? So every time you go out, you might have singing now, but then in a couple of weeks you'll have carrying nesting material, and a couple of weeks later you'll see them on the nest, and then you'll have the young, and so we'll have like this really detailed chronology, be able to really track what things are doing and how that changes over time.
So you will be able to get it online and call up the chronology of incubation in Long Island and Ithaca and the Adirondacks?
Hopefully.
Similar.
Yeah, hopefully. So we are planning to produce a book and a website. And the website would be an interactive website. So we would be also serving the historical information from the first two atlases alongside this current atlas, and then any sort of analyses or modeling that we do, we also want that to be available on the website as well. And then any of the data that is submitted in eBird will stay in eBird. So that part will stay in perpetuity. And then, there are some other external data sources that we aren't allowed to put into eBird, and those will be packaged with, our finalized data set. And those will be our available. Yeah. Jim?
Hey, just look at that, the website that you mentioned. It looks like there's 436 blocks that need 15 hours left. That's kind of daunting, but then you think one person goes 3 days, 5 hours, can polish up a block.
Exactly.
So that's cool. And you don't have to get them all, there's other people out there. So thinking of effort, I'm wondering, is that eBird makes it so much more accessible. Do you have any clue about how effort now compares to 20 years ago, either based on distribution, average hours per person, or total hours or total birds or anything like that?
So it's really difficult to assess. So I do know that in the first atlas, there were about 4,200 atlasers. And the second atlas, there were only about 1,200 atlasers. Yeah, so we had a huge change in the number of atlasers, and so I'm assuming that with that comes, more effort per person in the second atlas. But one of the things that we're still trying to work out is how to standardize effort across the three data points. There's some really good methods out of Europe, that out of the UK, that have been able to come up with some systems to statistics to try to standardize the effort by looking at the species that are observed. So, if you have a block here and there's a robin, then you know that a certain amount of effort is put in. If there's a Canada warbler, then you know there's even more effort put in. If you don't have a robin, then you know that you're missing even a baseline effort, right? So that kind of thing. So looking at these benchmark species type things. So that's one of the things that we will be doing, but we don't have a good handle on that yet. Another big problem for us is different people have different skills. And some people may be really good at identifying all of the species that are present, but they may not be as good at finding the breeding behaviors. Or you have, just a beginner birder who can't identify all the birds that are out there, right? So you've also got the observer skill variable as well.
So I found it interesting with the barn swallow example you showed. Looks like the range was declining even in the Adirondacks, which I think of as insect central.
Yeah, they were never very common in the Adirondacks, right? You can see they were still absent from much of it. But yeah, my personal experience being in the Adirondacks for the last 20 years, there's way fewer bugs than there used to be. Way fewer. Yeah.
And I guess I'll follow up Bob with another plug. So last summer was the summer I basically got addicted to atlasing. Basically, I would keep going out and keep finding confirmation. It's so much fun just to find, feeding young or some behavior. So I just kept doing it. And still I'll stop when I go out and don't see, and it just kept happening even well into August. I just kept finding, breeding behavior. It's a lot of fun. I will say though that a key skill to maximize this is being able to hear high pitch, because the young, they tend to call with really high pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, you kind of get it. You can tell right away. Okay, that's the baby noise. Not sure what species, but you can kind of start picking that out if you can hear that. And then it's like, okay, where is it?
So let me follow up on that, because I don't hear high pitch, and it is a huge handicap. But I've played with hearing aids, and that helps some people. But right now, what I prefer to use is the Hear Birds Again app. I don't know if anyone's heard of that.
It's a Lang Elliott thing.
It's the Lang Elliott app. So it used to be the Song Finder, if you've heard of that. Anyways, now I use the Hear Birds Again app. So you just need some special headphones, and then it plugs into your phone, and then it drops the pitch down, like a whole octave, basically, to where you can hear it, or you can drop it down even further. So it does require a little bit of relearning some of the sounds. It's the same pattern, right, but it's a completely different pitch, and it does, you have to relearn a
It
little
does
bit
that
in
in
your brain.
real time.
Yes, in real time. So yeah, so that's one tip that I do highly recommend. If hearing aids aren't working for you, try that. And then Merlin also has helped me as well. There'll be times where I'm like, God, there's so many shagbark hickories around here. There has to be a creeper, but I can't hear creepers, right? So then I turn Merlin on, and I'm like, yep, sure enough, there's one here, and I just start scanning all of the trunks, and I'm like, okay, there it is. So there are some that I totally agree that for Alicing, having a high pitch is really helpful, but it is possible as well. Just want to make sure that people realize that. Yeah.
That's why you're taking along my
Yes. Yes. I take my husband along. He still has really good. He has the ears and I have the eyes. So yes, find someone to go with you that can hear everything.
Do we have any final questions for Julie before we wrap up tonight? If not, be sure to visit her table of goodies, or this table of goodies, lots of goodies, so visit one of the tables of